His wife said I can dump him anytime, he's just a wallet I haven't emptied yet, but unbeknownst to her, her husband turned everything she thought she owned into dust. I froze in the dimly lit hallway of our penthouse on the 37th floor in Boston, Massachusetts. The city lights twinkled below like scattered diamonds, reflecting off the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was a quiet Friday night, and I, Tyler Grant, 42 years old, and a senior financial advisor at a high-stakes investment firm, was just looking for my phone charger in the dining room. That's when I heard the laughter drifting from the living room, sharp, carefree, laced with the scent of red wine and Chanel perfume. My wife Kelsey sat around the marble coffee table with her two closest friends, Riley and Tamara. They were all dressed in casual luxury. Kelsey in her silk blouse, her dark hair cascading perfectly, the kind of effortless beauty that had drawn me to her 9 years ago. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but her voice carried clearly through the open space. "Girl, please," Kelsey said, her tone dripping with arrogance as she leaned back on the velvet couch. "I can dump him any time. He's here for a reason. Men like Tyler think they're in control, but really he's just a wallet I haven't emptied yet." The women erupted in laughter. Riley chimed in. "So you're not in love with him at all?" Kelsey didn't hesitate. "Love, please. Love doesn't pay for vacations, handbags, or rent. He's too blind to see it. He thinks I'm his queen, but I'm just biding my time. When I'm done, he won't even know what hit him." Every word pierced me like a blade. My chest tightened, my breath caught in my throat. 9 years of marriage nights I stayed up late crunching numbers for multi-million-dollar deals, weekends I sacrificed to support her interior design startup, dipping into my savings to fund her dreams. All of it reduced to a wallet I haven't emptied yet. I stood there rooted in the shadows as the laughter echoed. It peeled away the illusions I'd clung to, revealing the fracture in our life together. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout or confront her in front of her friends. That wasn't my style. As a financial advisor handling portfolios worth tens of millions, I knew the value of patience, of waiting for the right moment to strike. Instead, I slipped back to our bedroom quietly, the charger forgotten. I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, the silk sheets cool against my palms, and let out a long, steady breath. No tears, no rage, just clarity. The woman I loved, the one I'd built this life for, saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. That night, as Kelsey came to bed smelling of wine and perfume, she leaned over and kissed my cheek like always. "Good night, babe," she murmured, her voice soft and routine. I forced a smile, turning to face her in the dim light. "You too, love." She rolled over, content, oblivious. But as I lay there staring at the ceiling, a plan began to form in my mind, a silent, methodical one. I wouldn't explode. I'd dismantle. Piece by piece, I'd turn everything she thought she owned into dust. She wanted to treat me like a wallet? Fine. I'd empty it on my terms. The next morning I woke early, the city skyline bathed in dawn's gray light. Kelsey was still asleep, her face peaceful. I made coffee in the kitchen, the machine humming softly, and started outlining my strategy on a notepad, discreet, like drafting a client proposal. First, I'd separate our finances, completely shielding what was mine. Then I'd gather evidence, observe her patterns. I knew her world revolved around appearances, the social circle, the luxury, the admiration. I'd erode that too subtly until she stood on nothing. By midday, as Kelsey stirred and began her routine blasting jazz on the speakers, sipping almond latte, scrolling Instagram, I was already in motion. I called my personal lawyer from the office, keeping my voice low. "I need to protect my assets," I said. Quietly, he understood. No drama, just precision. That was the beginning. Kelsey had no idea the man lying beside her had just declared a silent war, one where I'd use every tool in my arsenal to expose her game and end it on my terms. The morning after sunlight filtered through the penthouse windows, casting long shadows across the kitchen island. Kelsey stirred as usual, patting in with her hair tousled, reaching for the espresso machine. She turned on her jazz playlist, the smooth saxophone notes filling the air while she frothed almond milk for her latte. "Morning, babe," she said, flashing that effortless smile, scrolling through Instagram as if nothing had changed. I nodded, sipping my black coffee, my notepad from last night tucked away in my briefcase. She had no idea the ground beneath her was already shifting. I started with the finances, my domain after all. As a senior advisor at the firm, I dealt with asset protection daily for clients dodging taxes or bad divorces. Now it was my turn. That first day, I logged into our joint accounts from my office, the city buzzing below. I transferred the bulk of our savings, over $2.5 million, into a separate account under Pierce Equity, the holding company I'd co-founded years ago. It wasn't theft, it was reallocation. The funds were tied to my premarital investments, documented meticulously. Next, I contacted my attorney, a discreet shark named Harlan, who'd handled my business deals for a decade. Set up an irrevocable trust, I instructed over a secure line. Beneficiaries, my mother and sister. Move the stock portfolios there. By evening, my shares in various ventures, tech startups, real estate funds were shielded no longer in my personal name, but locked in the trust. Kelsey wouldn't notice yet. She rarely checked the balances. Beyond swiping her cards, I canceled her access next. The Amex Platinum, the Visa Black, all supplementary cards linked to my primary accounts. A quick call to the banks. Security concern, I said. Freeze them until further notice. It took less than an hour. By the end of the week, every financial tie was severed all, while I played the devoted husband. That night, I brought home her favorite sushi from that overpriced spot in Back Bay. Rough day at the office? She asked, popping a piece of tuna into her mouth. Nothing I can't handle, I replied, smiling. Inside, I was cataloging her every move. Evidence came next. I couldn't just divorce her. I needed proof to make any counterclaim airtight. I installed monitoring software on our shared devices, subtle legal apps disguised as security updates. Her iPhone synced to the old iPad in my study, giving me access to her iCloud locations, messages, photos. The first red flag popped up 2 days in a text to someone named Alex about meeting at the Four Seasons downtown. Can't wait to unwind, she wrote with a winking emoji. I cross-referenced it with her credit card statements, hotel charges, spa treatments, all on the supplementary card. I saved screenshots, timestamps, everything. To keep her off guard, I ramped up the affection surprise flowers delivered to her office weekend brunches at trendy spots. You're glowing, I told her one evening over wine at our rooftop terrace. She beamed, oblivious. Thanks to you, honey. But I was building a dossier receipts for lingerie she never wore for me, late-night Ubers to addresses I didn't recognize. Social isolation was trickier, but I knew her Achilles heel, her circle of friends, who thrived on status and gossip. Kelsey lived for the admiration, the influencers, the socialites, the whispers of, look at her life. I started planting seeds subtly. At Riley's birthday party in a swanky loft in the Seaport district, I pulled Riley aside during cocktails. Kelsey's been so stressed lately. I confided, my voice low and concerned. I worry she's pushing herself too hard, maybe losing touch with who she is. Riley nodded sympathetically, but I saw the spark of doubt. Later at the gym we both frequented, I chatted with their shared trainer, slipping him a generous tip. Kelsey's been hitting those late sessions hard, I mentioned casually. Heard she's been relaxing at hotels afterward, hope she's okay. Word spread like wildfire in their echo chamber. By the end of the second week, I noticed the shift, fewer group chats, lighting up her phone cooler responses in her messages. The psychological play was the most satisfying. I encouraged her independence, feeding her ego. You should take more girls' trips. I suggested one morning, handing her a brochure for a spa retreat in Nantucket. You deserve it. She booked it immediately using one of the cards before it froze. I even let her handle selling our vacation condo in Cape Cod, though it was solely in my name. I trust you completely, I said, looking into her eyes. She preened, feeling empowered, but the cracks appeared soon. One Monday morning, she burst into the kitchen, phone in hand, her face pale. Tyler, the accounts are locked, the Amex declined at the coffee shop, and the bank app won't load. What the hell? I set down my mug, feigning concern. Really? Let me check. Probably just a system glitch, I'll call them. As I pretended to dial, I watched her fidget, the first flicker of unease in her eyes. She didn't know it yet, but the foundation of her world was crumbling, brick by silent brick. And I was the architect. 3 weeks later, the pieces were in place. Kelsey's world was a house of cards, and I was ready to let the wind blow. To them, I was the doting spouse, the one who funded her rise without complaint. As the evening progressed, the DJ spun upbeat tracks and waiters circulated with trays of canapes. Kelsey was in her element, flitting from group to group, her laughter ringing out. I watched from the bar nursing a scotch, noting how she avoided lingering near me. At one point, she posed for photos with a cluster of Instagram-famous designers, her arm linked with a tall guy in a designer vest Alex I recognized from the messages. He whispered something in her ear and she threw her head back in amusement. My grip tightened on the glass, but I kept my expression neutral. This wasn't the time for emotion, it was the prelude to the end. The highlight was her speech. The music faded, and she stepped onto a small platform under the stars, microphone in hand. The crowd hushed. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice confident and charismatic. "What did you think?" she asked, her tone light, expectant. I looked at her, really looked the woman I'd once seen as my partner, now a stranger in her own ambition. "You were brilliant," I said sincerely. "Radiant as always." She smiled, satisfied, and leaned in to kiss my cheek. "Thanks, babe. This is just the beginning." Then she turned back to the party, drawn to the lights and laughter. I didn't follow her. Instead, I slipped away quietly, nodding goodbyes to a few acquaintances. Down in the lobby, I handed the valet my ticket and drove home alone, the penthouse waiting empty and silent. I packed a small bag, just essentials, and forwarded all necessary documents to my lawyer. By midnight, I was in a hotel across town, my phone set to block her number. The next phase was automated servers would lock her out of shared accounts, emails would bounce, and the divorce papers would land in her inbox at dawn. The morning came crisp and clear. I imagined her waking up in that hotel room she'd booked for after-party relaxation, alone, disoriented. No good morning text from me. She probably reached for her phone first as always. Calls to my number straight to voicemail blocked. Bank app access, denied balances zeroed out where they mattered, work email credentials revoked. Then the ping and email from Harlan's firm representing Mr. Tyler Grant. Attached petition for dissolution of marriage, all assets confirmed as separate property per prenuptial agreement and recent audits. No division requested. Any disputes will be met with full evidentiary disclosure. I pictured her face in the kitchen back home or wherever she scrambled to pale, frantic scrolling through contacts. Riley, no answer. Tamara, blocked. Her Instagram feed followers dropping like flies, algorithm sensing the shift from rumors I'd seeded. She was unraveling thread by thread and I wasn't even there to watch. But I knew this was the moment she realized the wallet she'd mocked had closed itself forever. On the third day, I received confirmation from Harlan that the summons had been delivered. Kelsey was required to appear at his office downtown, a sleek glass tower in the financial district. I arrived early, settling into the conference room with its polished oak table and views of the harbor. No need for Harlan to sit in, this was personal. I wanted her to face me alone, to see the man she'd underestimated without intermediaries. She showed up 10 minutes late, her usual poise cracked. Dark sunglasses hid her eyes. Her hair pulled into a hasty bun, no trace of the bold red lipstick she favored. She wore a simple black blazer over jeans, practical, almost defeated. As she sat across from me, the air felt heavy, charged with unspoken accusations. "What do you want, Tyler?" she asked, her voice edged with fatigue, removing the glasses to reveal red-rimmed eyes. I leaned back, folding my hands on the table. "Nothing from you, Kelsey. I just want you to understand the game you were playing and how you never knew the rules." Before she could respond, Harlan's assistant entered with a stack of folders, placing them between us. I opened the first one myself, sliding papers across bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts under Pierce Equity's umbrella, all predating her suspicions. "These are my assets," I explained calmly. "Moved, legally documented as separate property. You have no claim." Her face paled as she scanned them. "This can't be right. We shared everything." I shook my head. "You shared my everything, but I protected what was mine." Next came the evidence folder printouts of texts to Alex, timestamps from hotel check-ins, GPS logs from her phone syncing to our shared cloud, photos of receipts, jewelry dinners, weekends away, all charged to cards she'd thought were unlimited. "And this," I said, pointing to a highlighted section, "is fraud. Using marital funds for personal affairs. It's all here ready for court if you contest." She recoiled, her hands trembling as she flipped through. "Tyler, I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her voice cracked, the confidence gone. You said you loved me. I met her gaze steadily. I did. Once. But love isn't a wallet, to empty at your convenience. You treated our marriage like a transaction, now it's settled. She tried to pivot, leaning forward with desperation. Can we talk alone? Just us as husband and wife. We can fix this. I made mistakes, but I cut her off, my tone even. We're not husband and wife anymore, not after this. I pushed the final envelope toward her, the divorce petition pre-signed by me. No division of assets, no alimony. You're free, Kelsey, independent like you preached at your party. But you'll start over with nothing. No safety net, no handouts. She stared at the papers, tears welling. You can't do this. Please, Tyler, I need time. I stood signaling the end. You've had 9 years. Time's up. She left clutching the envelope, her steps unsteady as she exited the building. I didn't follow. Instead, I reviewed the logs from her phone one last time. Calls to Riley and Tamara went unanswered. My planted doubts had taken root, turning her allies into ghosts. Her interior design firm's inbox filled with cancellations, partners pulling out over reputational risks from the whispers I'd started. The company website hosted on a domain I'd quietly controlled went dark for non-payment, another loose end tied off. Even Alex, her fling, ignored her frantic messages. I'd anonymously tipped him off about the impending scandal via a burner email. As I left the office walking through the bustling streets of Boston, I felt no triumph, just closure. The evidence was ironclad, her empire reduced to echoes. She'd wake up tomorrow in whatever temporary refuge she found, realizing the man she'd dismissed had stripped away her illusions layer by layer. I glanced at my watch time to head to the airport for Boulder. Kelsey was now just a shadow of her former self, adrift in the world she'd built on deceit. 6 months had passed since that meeting in Harlan's office, and my life had transformed in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. I'd relocated to Boulder, Colorado, drawn by the crisp mountain air and the promise of a fresh start. The penthouse in Boston sold quickly through a discreet auction, netting me a tidy profit that went straight into my new ventures. Pierce Equity expanded under my direction, launching a boutique investment firm focused on sustainable tech startups. The move made headlines in niche circles. Business Insider even featured me in their top 100 entrepreneurs who rebounded after divorce list. I didn't seek the spotlight, but it came anyway. In a podcast interview one crisp autumn afternoon, the host leaned into the mic asking the inevitable, "What got you through the emotional fallout?" I paused, staring out at the Rockies from my new office, the peak sharp against the blue sky. I didn't rebound from a shock, I said evenly. I stepped away from an illusion and I started living like someone who knows his own worth. The episode went viral in business podcasts, racking up thousands of downloads. Little did I know it reached her too. Back in Boston, Kelsey had faded into obscurity. From what Harlan's updates revealed strictly professional, no spying, she'd moved into a cramped studio in Dorchester, a working-class neighborhood far from the glittering high-rises she once called home. No more rooftop parties or designer brunches. Her days were spent job hunting, piecing together freelance gigs in graphic design, since her interior firm collapsed under the weight of canceled contracts. The scandal I'd seeded whispers of financial impropriety had branded her toxic in those circles. Sponsors pulled out, citing reputational risks. Her website, once a showcase of luxury portfolios, went offline when the domain expired unpaid. She tried reaching out, of course. Blocked calls from unknown numbers, emails routed to spam. I ignored them all, focusing instead on my family, visiting my mother in Vermont, funding my sister's art school tuition through the trust. They were my real anchors, the ones who'd never seen me as a wallet. One evening, as I wrapped up a client call in my Boulder loft, I imagined her routine scrolling on an old iPhone with a cracked screen, perhaps stumbling upon that podcast. The words hitting her like barbs stepped away from an illusion. Every syllable, a reminder of her own hubris. Reports confirmed she'd lost nearly all her followers. The algorithm buried her under irrelevance. Then there was that small anecdote Harlan mentioned offhand from a PI update I'd requested once for closure. One June afternoon, Kelsey stepped out of a corner grocery in Dorchester, arms laden with discount bags. A young boy on a scooter bumped into her, nearly toppling her load. "Sorry, ma'am," he mumbled. She paused, setting down the bags, and gently ruffled his hair with a faint smile. "It's okay, kiddo." For a moment, something human flickered in her, a glimpse of the woman I'd fallen for years ago. But then she straightened, gathered her things, and walked on, dissolving into the crowd of commuters and strangers. Invisible in the world she'd once thought she ruled. Sitting in my office now, surrounded by family photos, my mother beaming at a holiday dinner, my sister at her gallery opening, I knew I'd made the right choice. Not revenge fueled by anger, but justice through truth. Kelsey had called me a wallet she'd yet to empty, but I was the one who'd built the house she thought was hers alone. When I walked away, she was left with nothing but the shattered illusions she'd crafted herself.